Hi, Kara. How are you? Happy Data Privacy Week.
Hey, Ben, I am great. How are you? And happy Data Privacy Week to you as well. It's my favorite week of the year, almost.
It,
There might be a few other weeks in the running,
it's
but
top three,
it's
though.
up
It's
there.
top three, right? We're right there with you. Well, thanks so much for joining us. I mean, we're super excited for today's conversation. Let me just kick things off real quick. So thanks to everyone for joining us here on LinkedIn Live. I'm Ben Weichert. I'm with Catch. We're a data privacy and governance company. And as you know, it's Data Privacy Week. So in honor of that, we're hosting a series called Faces of Privacy all week long, where we're talking to privacy leaders about how to really maximize the value of your privacy program. So every day this week, we've got different sessions lined up. Quick plug, we've got a great session tomorrow all about building an enterprise privacy layer for AI. So you want to come back and be sure to check that out. But today we've got an awesome session. It's all about building a best of breed privacy program. And I'm joined by Kara Larson, Associate General Counsel at 6th Sense. So Kara, thank you so much for joining us.
No, thank you. Thanks for having me, Ben. And before we get too far down the road, I did want to mention that I had a beautiful virtual 6th Sense background with a lovely picture of New Orleans. I am having internet issues today, so it was have the virtual background or have my mouth not match what I was saying. So we went with,
It was a tough choice, though. I think it's a good teaser for the audience. Maybe at the end we can flash it real quickly, because then that'll be a reason to stay, throughout the duration. Because it was very cool. It was a top 5 background. It was beautiful. It had kibble cars and flowers, and it was very kind of balmy. So very nice. Well, great. Well, so yeah, I mean, best of breed privacy. We're going to unpack the term. We're going to talk about some of the advantages of that approach. I think we'll probably compare it with some other approaches that people are maybe more familiar with, and really kind of get into it. So just to start the conversation, Kara, do you mind telling us a little bit about yourself and your role at 6th Sense and the kinds of things you're working on?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm Assistant General Counsel for Privacy and Compliance at 6th Sense. I have been with 6th Sense for a little over 3 years, just celebrated my work anniversary earlier this month, in fact. And for folks who are unfamiliar, 6th Sense is a revenue AI platform. We assist businesses with their marketing and sales efforts to other businesses, leveraging the power of AI to deliver results for marketing and sales teams. So our platform does a little bit of everything. And so it's a fascinating role that I'm in because a lot of the hot issues that there's the news coverage of, I get to think about those things in a real world context, which has been wonderful.
Yeah, I can only imagine a lot of very interesting data use cases of people wanting to do new things with data and try things. I'm sure you're very busy. So, I mean, it's kind of to that point, I think we can still say it's the start of a new year. I think we're 4 weeks into January. Yeah, it's still right.
Yeah.
We get to say that throughout January, right? So, I mean, there's so much going on in 24, as there is every year, right? There's new state privacy laws, there's new enforcement dates. We've already had a lot of enforcement activity, in the first couple of weeks. There's sectoral stuff, AI, on and on. So can you help us think through just what are you thinking about sitting here from your perch? What are the types of things you're prioritizing for 2024? What's your thought process?
Yeah, and I think the approach that I take is that every choice that you make to focus on something or do something is a choice, because one of the most limited resources that we have is time. So a decision to do something means that something else is not being done during that point in time. So obviously we're keeping an eye on the big ones, right? We're keeping an eye on the upcoming EU AI Act, the text of which was leaked yesterday. I think we're waiting for final regs on that, the final draft on that tomorrow. Those big overarching pieces of legislation. But of course, we're also keeping an eye on things at home. We know that the FTC has been interested in AI and use of AI, but also more generally trying to keep tabs on state privacy law changes and just make sure, because we are a global company, there are a number of different facets in terms of what affects what part, either from the data we provide to our customers, the way we handle customer data, or even our own HR data. But it is a matter of figuring out what's going to have the biggest impact, where does the biggest risk come from, and what staffing or resources are available to kind of break off these pieces so that way you can stay informed and stay on top of current events without, having analysis paralysis or spending all of your time reading regulations and guidance and, summaries thereof and blogs about that, because you really could spend an entire working week every week reading all of that. And so that's why it's really key to have good members on your team who can, help synthesize, help keep track of that. Thank goodness I'm not just one person, and work with everyone on the legal team who kind of helps with that.
Yeah, no, it's a great answer. And, you touched on a lot of different facets, right? So we talked about the EU AI Act and the state law and, data, consumer data, employee data, HR data. It reminds me of a conversation we have with a lot of organizations, which is really, oh my gosh, privacy is evolving so fast. There's so much noise. There's so much kind of dimensionality. We're just overwhelmed. And you use the language of analysis paralysis, which we see a lot. So with companies, as they're trying to say, where do I even start to think about building out a strategy? So maybe that's the right question. How do you start thinking about building out your strategy? And, do you try to break all of this into different buckets or dimensions so that you actually can make sense of it all and build essentially a roadmap for your program? How do you think about making sense of it? Because it can be so overwhelming.
There are a few different strategies. I know that some companies break things out by region. They've got specific teams that look at specific geographies and use that as the, okay, this team says to do this. And, this one issue with that is it can make it difficult to get like this holistic, top level, what are the, bottom line requirements that are common across all jurisdictions. One, method, or what I personally subscribe to, is, what does our business do? What kind of data do we process? That helps scope the applicability of regulations and laws. First question to ask is always, does this apply? Does this apply to us? Does it apply to our customers? Does it apply to, our HR data? But also, where is the risk coming from?
Yeah.
Is this something that would be a huge risk? Is this something that would be a minor risk? And finally, how visible is it? Is it something that, we're making statements about that are on the website? Is it, our privacy policy? Is it, cookies or tags on the website that's very easy for someone to come and see? Or, is it something less visible? Those are all kind of the calculus going into it, because additionally, there's going to be some pieces that are so important, that are so heavily covered in the news, that being on top of it is helpful from a customer relations perspective, because they're going to ask a lot of the questions that we're trying to answer. And so staying on top of it there helps prevent additional work, down the line.
That's a really practical way to think about it, right? So what's the risk? What's the level of visibility? What's the profile of this issue just in the news? Because if it's high profile, well, people are going to ask you about it. So let's actually invest the time to have a point of view and maybe even be proactive versus being reactive. One of the things that you said before was, what are we trying to do? And what is the data component of this, right? And so as we always talk about, privacy programs are increasingly about data management. And we use this term, privacy is really a data management problem or issue with a legal outcome versus the other way around. So increasingly, I think your technology choices, your tech stack, and even your tech partners are going to play a really outsized role in the overall success of your program. So as you're thinking about, potentially tech partners that you want to work with, what are some of the considerations that you and your team are making as you're thinking about what kind of privacy tech you might need to explore?
Well, our theme on the privacy side of the house this last year has been automation.
Okay.
Identifying where are those pieces of process or procedure that there's a lot of human capital, human investment, and the important thing is, like, it can be human labor intensive, and is it well suited for trying to automate? I'm specifically looking at like repetitive tasks that are, a lot of times very easy, like if then statements.
Yeah.
But that to me is, started the talk thinking about time is a valuable resource, and it's a limited resource. And so when thinking through, technology partners and vendors, our, top of mind thinking has been, how do we automate? But truly, like, what do we need to automate? Because each privacy program and team is going to have different needs.
Yeah.
Some teams are going to really want to automate, the data subject request process. Some teams have a gap and are spending a lot of labor and time on training. And maybe that's what they start to look for in a technology partner, like who can offer training services. Some teams are, trying to like disperse policies to their employees and track that. It's a really good exercise to sit down and ask yourself, like, what are all of the human activities that we're doing, and what of those activities are well suited to automation? And that's kind of the beginning point of starting to think about a technology vendor. And of course, there's a lot more questions that come after, do we want to automate it? In terms of like, what other tooling exists in the company? Will this integrate with the existing tooling? It may be like a really cool feature or software, but if it doesn't play nicely with the existing services and processes that you're already using, that can, weigh against perhaps going that route.
Yeah, no, and I think you hit on a really important point, which we see all the time, which is different privacy programs have different needs, right? If you have a lot of transaction volume and a lot of customers, submitting rights requests or hitting your website and updating consent choices, the level of automation probably becomes really paramount, right? Just because you have so much volume. Other programs are maybe more focused on privacy training and awareness. There are other programs where oftentimes, you have a marketing stakeholder or an analytics stakeholder saying, this is actually about a first party data strategy. And so you're kind of going in that direction and saying, okay, how do we build a fully permissioned data asset? So I love the way you're framing it, which, if I can read it back to you, is figure out what's really important to us based on our unique needs and what we're trying to accomplish. Make that list of must-haves, and then start to understand, okay, do we have that capability in-house already? So great, we can leverage something. Or if we don't, or something that's not quite right, well, let's start to explore something that maybe better fits the need that we have. And I think that gets closer to this idea of best of breed, right? And really looking for privacy tech specifically, or any tech in general, that really solves the discrete need that you have. So how do you start thinking about this idea of best of breed? And I think from our perspective, we think best of breed, okay, something that's really fit for purpose or purpose built. That might be some of the language that we use. But help us think through this idea and this construct of best of need in the context of evolving a privacy program.
Yeah, and I think best of breed is going to look different depending on the context. Some best of breed programs are going to be, in a healthcare space. So they're dealing with regulated data. And so they have a lot of processes and procedures specifically related to, how they handle the regulated PHI. Some other, privacy programs are going to be a small business, and maybe their biggest, area of personal data processing relates to their website. Other places are going to provide, different services to their customers. What level of customer data are they processing in terms of personal data? What types of information are they taking in? What industry are they in? And so it's really hard to say, hey, like, you need to do this to have a best in breed. To me, it's also not just checking the boxes on compliance. It's not just, hey, we've got a cookie banner. Hey, we do data subject requests really well. To me, to be a true like best in breed, best in class privacy program, you have to understand the unique needs of the business and be seen as a valuable asset to the rest of the company. Everyone is going towards the same goal, ideally, right? You want to have a successful company, and very often privacy teams can be considered almost like this like cost center. And so it's thinking through, like, for your unique circumstances, based on the personal data that you're processing, based on the jurisdiction that you're in, how do you provide value to the rest of the business? And how do you partner with the business in a way that feels like a real partnership? Because the rest of the checklist is going to come and you're going to get there. But by building those relationships, you can start to spot, hey, I didn't know that this had to be on the checklist because I didn't know this was going on. Or, hey, this idea came, let's talk it through. What kind of tweaks can we make before implementation? So that way, we're all on the same page and we've thought through these issues. But until you build those relationships with the rest of the company, you're going to struggle, even if you've hit every single box on that checklist.
Yeah, I think it's a difference of just kind of a transactional, okay, what are the 5 things we need to do versus actually being a business partner to other stakeholders. And okay, what are you trying to accomplish? Okay, now that I have that context, well, here's some different ways that we might go about it and taking that next step. I mean, maybe we can double click on that for a second, because in my experience, talking to many privacy folks, you see all kinds of different levels of relationship between the privacy team and other stakeholders in the organization, right? We have this line, privacy is a team sport. And sometimes they'll say, oh gosh, the marketing team is wonderful. And they're always right there with us and in the trenches. And so sometimes you see that. And sometimes you see, the pendulum on the other side, where it's like, man, we can't even get time with that marketing team or that technology team or that analytics team. In your experience, what have you seen work in terms of building those deeper relationships and building consensus among stakeholders versus feeling like, I know I talk to a lot of privacy folks and say, man, I kind of feel like we're going at it alone. And it almost feels adversarial. So what has worked in your experience? Because I think it's a really salient topic and people are probably curious.
It absolutely is. And I'll let you in on a little secret. If you are trying to meet with a team for the first time and you're having trouble getting that appointment scheduled, and the purpose of that appointment is to tell them that they are doing something wrong, that is exactly why you're having trouble meeting with that team. The first time that you speak to someone should not be, hey, you're doing this wrong, or hey, you need to change this. Anytime starting out in a new company or a new role or building out a privacy program, it's really, really important to just set up, 10 or 15 minutes, get to know the people that you work with, get to know what they're responsible for, what their duties are, and start just having human conversations with them, and drawing these human connections. Because it's tough, right? Because, you are a steward of the personal data that your company is processing. You are there to protect that personal data. But you also can't lose sight of the fact that you are working with other people. We're all working towards the same goal. And just putting 5 or 10 minutes on the calendar to get to know someone, check in, how's your week going? I hope it's going well, is going to open a lot more doors and lead to more fruitful conversations than setting up like a half hour and running through, the website and saying, you need to change this, and this. Let me tell you a little bit something about, personal data. So that conversation can come later. But hopefully, you've already formed that relationship, and it'll also pay dividends because they'll feel more comfortable coming to you, right? Like they'll feel more comfortable thinking, oh, I have this idea. I want to do this thing. I'm not sure, but I know enough to know I should go speak with privacy.
Yeah.
And privacy isn't going to, make me feel badly about it. Even if it ultimately doesn't go forward, getting that muscle and that reflex to go check with privacy only happens if privacy is welcoming, and kind. which I know sounds very basic, but
what you're saying is just talk to people like a human. Don't talk to them like a lawyer. Don't talk to them like a privacy person. There's a time and a place, and of course, but really what I think you're saying is if you invest in the relationship, and doesn't it always come down to that? People are more willing to come to you early and try to work with you to figure things out versus I think the bad behavior you see in a lot of organizations is it's the 11th hour. We've already done all the things, and then you're in a really tight spot because you don't want to be that person that says no. Well, everything's ready in the campaign and the agency and this and that. So I love that advice, and I think it's just so ubiquitous, right? In kind of anything you do, but certainly in kind of this construct. So, so we talked about, I think, and I hope people take away, when we talk of best of breed, it's not just the technology that you choose. That's certainly a component of it, but best of breed is really, what is the privacy program I have today? What is the program I want to have in 12 and 18 months? And what are all of the components, the people, the frameworks, sure, the technology that we need to put in place, and having a technology platform that gives you, and quite frankly, working relationships that give you the agility to pivot as new things up and to prioritize and deprioritize. One of the first things you said, Kara, is it's about trade-offs, right? We can't do everything all at once. So what has to be done right now versus we just need to do, and then we can kind of come back to later. And I think that's a really smart way to think about it. Just to get it back to the tech angle, though, because I think that is an interesting component. When you think of best of breed, you're thinking about probably maybe some different technology layers, some different components that you've put together because they're doing a certain part of the privacy program extraordinarily well. And so I just wanted to explore this idea of, well, are there any potential trade-offs with that approach? Are there any potential downsides? And one of the things that comes up that I think people should think about is training, right? And so one of the things that you'll hear is, oh gosh, we have to train on a new platform. Oh, there's some adoption challenges. And so in your experience, is that something that's come up, kind of the training aspect, the learning a new technology? How are you thinking about kind of proactively addressing it so it doesn't become problematic?
No, absolutely. And I think it has to be part of your initial, RFP or questionnaires, because you are, and like it or hate it, I am a very, logical kind of practical person. And I can relate to, pure like dollars and cents or pure like hours, minutes, days, and years. If you've got a super awesome platform or technology that you're looking at, whatever the case may be, whatever department you're in, and it requires 40 hours of training for everyone on the team to use. Okay, it's important to know that. So if you know it and you can say, yes, my team has capacity to do, 40 hours of training, this is a trade-off because the gains once we're in and fully ramped and using the platform are going to outweigh this, 40 hours. Or your team may not have capacity to do, extensive training. You may be, rapidly expanding. And so you're looking at, it's not just training for the team, it's training for new employees. And so in some situations, this element of, how easy is it to use and how much training does it require becomes more critical because you are trying to balance out, human resources. And it is weighing this, ultimate benefit against human capital against, true subscription cost as well. And that's just, if you were in a silo, if your department was the whole company, you're just privacy company, that could be like the sum total of your considerations. But you also have to think about what other departments are interested in. What tooling are they looking at? Does it, is it compatible with their tooling as of today? Is it compatible with their tooling they're considering in the future? And a lot of it is collaboration because you are 95% sure that for most of the people listening, you are not going to get your way 100% of the time. But the more you think through, the business case, what you want the tech to do, how you want the tech to work, the easier it will be to have those conversations with other departments to determine, is this going to be a good fit with our existing, tech stack? Do we need to look for something else? Because then you'll be able to discuss and collaborate and say, hey, I really need to do this thing. It's really important to me that I have a tool that does training or data subject requests or, a cookie banner. Here are the reasons why. This is what I'm solving. And, our existing tooling meets that need or it does not meet the need. And because you're also, in today's, economic headwinds, you're also, justifying your budget. Privacy is already considered in many orgs, not ours, luckily, but a cost center for the business. So you're already spending money on salaries and benefits and everything else for the employee, the employees.
Yeah.
But now you're asking to bring on a vendor. And so being able to show the value of the tool, like what problem is it trying to solve, and the fact that you thought about your existing tech stack, it's yes, like how much does it take to train someone to use it? But that's just one cog in a number of other, decisions and factors to figure out, is this going to be a good fit for us? And is it a fit for us right now?
I love that. And the way as I'm hearing you talk and my wheels are turning, it's like, look, we can go down path A, which is status quo, or path B, which is this new path. There's pros and cons of both, but you need the ability to build out essentially the business case. And hopefully that's not something that scares people, because it really isn't. Really what you're doing is you're taking account of, well, how much time are we spending today, doing things? And we'll often call this the hidden cost of privacy, right? So all of the things that people are doing manually because we don't have the right tool, that's X hours. And that's not a steady state X hours. That's going to increase as we have new regs and the EU Act and all of these things. So that's increasing. Versus if we actually have the right application or tool, here's how many hours we think people will spend. And here's the incremental hours, and maybe it's the 40 hours of privacy training. But very quickly, you hit a break even probably in the first month or two. And then there's upside, right, in that approach. So being able to actually have the argument, have a financial argument about how many hours, here's how much we're spending on resources, and making it very easy for the powers to be to say, well, this is kind of a no-brainer, right? As much as you can put it on a silver platter for that individual. And what I always say is, don't go it alone, right? Your stakeholders, your folks in the business, the technology folks, make them part of your committee that are selling this vision and this approach, because they're paying what we call a privacy tax too, right? Your technology teams, your IT teams, well, they don't want to be manually updating tags on the website for every new reg. So they have a very vested interest as well. So being able to build a business case and kind of put that together. And again, back to your earlier point about it being a team sport and bringing other people along, I think is really important. The other point, as you were talking about training, there's different ways that training can happen, right? Training can be kind of faceless. Hey, log into this platform, put your 40 hours. Or training can be, hey, we're actually going to work with our customer success team. They're going to hop on a call. They're going to show us how to do it. They're going to record a Loom video and just share it with us. And that's your training. And, personally, I know which one of those two experiences I would want. So I think it behooves us to kind of ask those questions and say, well, when you say training, what does that look like? And is it asynchronous, or do I actually have a partner that's kind of holding my hand and investing some time with me? So thanks for exploring that space. I think we're getting pretty close to the midpoint, a couple of minutes. So I think I'll ask you just one final question, if you don't mind. And you alluded to this earlier. It's a new year. No, it's an easy. It's a softball. Just what are some of the things? If I'm a lot of new year, a lot of people starting new roles, right? It's fun to see. I see it on LinkedIn. What are some of the considerations that I should have if I'm a new privacy leader in my first, call it 90 days, 100 days? What are some of the core activities or milestones that I should be thinking about, would you say?
Yeah, absolutely. If you're in your first 90 days, as mentioned, I think it's really important to have meetings with other departments, not just the departments that you're going to be working with on a day-to-day, but other stakeholders in the business. Just not to do investigation, not to do sleuthing, not to uncover all of the data, but just to talk to them and get to know them. I think in your first 90 days, you're also getting a handle on who does what in the company, who can you go to with questions. Yeah. And that's when you start evaluating risk and applicability. What regulations are going to be at play here? What are the inherent risks with those? And where are we, visible in terms of our handling of personal data? And that'll help you more quickly identify the critical pieces that you need to address, because you're not going to, you might, I don't know, I don't want to speak for everyone, but you're probably not going to build a comprehensive privacy program that hits every bucket on that checklist within those first 90 days. And
Sure.
So it really should be getting to know the company, getting to know the other people, and getting to know the data so that you're well primed to execute moving forward from that point.
The company, the people, the data. I love it. I didn't even expect it. That was great. I'm going to start using that. I hope you don't mind. I'll give you extra.
Please.
Very, very nice. Well, Kara, thank you so much for this lively conversation. I really appreciate it. And hopefully, I'm sure, the folks attending learned a lot. So thank you, and happy Data Privacy Week to you.
Thank you, Ben. Happy Data Privacy Week to you as well.
Thank you. And last thing, we are, I think in the comments, putting a link to a new guide that we've put together, 2024 Trends in Data Privacy. So check that out. There's some really cool stuff. and it'll help you think through your strategy for the new year. So thanks again from
Awesome.
all of us over here at Catch, and thanks to Kara, and we'll catch you tomorrow.
Thanks all. Bye.